search team at Google, based here in New York. I spend most of my time day to day on a project called Google Things to Do, which is all about finding better results for queries related to attraction tickets, tours, and activities, things like that. Today we're going to speak about something a little bit broader though, future of search. I have kind of two goals for today's presentation. The first is that I hope you leave it feeling a little bit more grounded in where Google currently is in kind of this rapidly evolving AI ecosystem and what our products look like today and a little bit of where we're going. And hopefully I can give you a few kind of tips and tools and maybe some things you're not aware of that can help best position your content to showcase in these emerging AI tools on Google. So I know I don't need to convince you that Google is large, probably. But we see about 5 trillion queries a year currently, so it's kind of hard to wrap your head around the scale of that number. One way I like to think about it is it's actually multiple queries per day per human on Earth. So it's quite large and continuing to grow, which is impressive. Like all things, the world's changing really quickly, Google's changing really quickly. David kind of talked a little bit about the velocity. That's really true at Google too. I was thinking about in preparation for today, one of the interesting things was I was doing this presentation a year ago. Almost everything I'm talking about today wasn't even really on our roadmap last year, so it wasn't even launched, but it also wasn't even on our roadmap. And so it's just really been impressive how much the company has kind of adopted AI and moved things forward. I've been at the company a little over 10 years now, and I can confidently say it's really the fastest we've ever changed. So we're going to talk mostly about search today, but I think it is good to remember, Google is a wide ecosystem of products, and the way users are interacting with Google is changing on lots of different dimensions at once, not just within search. So on, creating imagery, I don't know if anyone's played around with Nano Banana. They just announced this week that passed the mark of 1 billion images that they created with that tool on Gemini, again, something that wasn't even live 6 months ago. How we write, definitely something that's continuing to change. Actually, just yesterday, this is kind of funny to do presentations at Google right now because every week there's an announcement and then the presentation is obsolete, like David said. But just yesterday they announced that you can actually add in some of your Google apps into your Gemini app to connect those. And Gmail's one of them, right? And I actually would put my money on this dimension, maybe getting the most new adoption this year of any of these. If you think about one of the friction points, I think, in AI writing tools today is that they often have trouble feeling authentic to your voice. And so if you think about things like if you could incorporate your Gmail history and your sort of history of writing into these tools, it could sound a lot more like you when you're using them, and I think that would really help with the adoption of them. Also how we learn, right? So it's not just text-based anymore, but using videos and imagery to ask Google questions on a variety of our services. So coming back to search, if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, I'd say to me the most profound shift we're seeing in queries is that they're longer and harder questions. So if you look at AI mode, which is our native AI search experience, we have about 2 to 3 times the length on average of queries on AI mode than we do in traditional search. One of the interesting ways I like to think about this is just kind of a real profound change, is if you think about sort of the last 20 years that we've learned to, as users, search on Google. We've kind of learned this language of keywords over time, so it's really about sort of approximating what we're actually looking for with a few different words that we've learned will kind of help us get to the result that we're looking at. What's really different about AI search is you can really just be a lot more literal and say exactly what you're looking for. So the search is no longer often things to do in Nashville, but it might be more, I have a bachelor party coming up in June that I'm planning, and I want to go on a food tour, and I have 2 vegans and I have 1 person with a peanut allergy. Can you help me find which tour for that option, right? That would have been a pretty daunting task before, but now the expectation is that Google can actually find that for you and give you a good result. And so, yeah, I just think that one of the most important things to know about how search is changing is that the queries are a lot longer and a lot more complicated. One of the primary surfaces we have for AI search is AI mode. I don't know how many folks have started using that. It's a tab at the top of search, kind of our native AI search experience built from the ground up. To give you a little peek of how that kind of works under the hood, it uses this technique called query fan-out. And so when you ask a question in Google on AI mode today, what's actually happening is Google's issuing many different queries at once, and then compiling those and trying to find you the best result. It's also able to evaluate those results that it's going to give you in real time, and it may even issue more queries as the search is happening. Another key part of an AI search experience is that it should be conversational. So when the result comes back, it should allow opportunity for follow-up questions, and it should kind of incorporate the history of the conversation as well. So also, it's not just text, right? So the way that users are searching is coming in a bunch of different modalities now. So you have image search. That is something that some folks may have used. Kind of on Google Lens, we have the circle to search feature. So if you're kind of browsing images, you can actually just circle, say you're interested in those sunglasses, you could pull them up and find those exact sunglasses or similar ones and where to actually purchase them. This is really popular with young folks. So we already see that for our younger users, about 10% of searches are actually starting with images now, and quickly growing. Voice is a modality I think most of us are pretty comfortable with assistants being around for the last few years. Things like Siri, Alexa, etc. So that's something that we're all kind of used to at this point. Video also quickly emerging here, and there's a lot of advancements in the intelligence that we can use on video search. So what I find actually impressive about this particular search is the person's asking, why is this thing moving around? Why won't this stay still? And of course, it's a record player. That's kind of easy to distill. But just using the word it, the intelligence in the LLMs now, can figure out that by it, you actually mean the needle itself, right? And that kind of powerful context is really, I would say, like a key change step forward in video search. So also something I would expect more and more of going forward. The surfaces that we show, so all of the modalities of how we search, right, changing, also the surfaces of where we show this content, really rapidly changing. So this is kind of like a cheat sheet of just as a reference point of all the different places where AI search can appear on Google. We have AI overviews, so that's kind of the search experience that appears at the very top of the search page, often as a summarized result. I've heard some folks fondly call it kind of the forced AI Google experience, but that's always there at the top of search. AI mode, like I mentioned, and was just talking about the native search experience that appears as kind of a tab to the left. We're trying out if you haven't tried it. Live in, I think, 200 markets and 40 languages now, so again, really rapidly growing. We also have the Gemini app, similar to AI mode, but as a separate app using the Gemini functionality. Pretty impressive numbers there in terms of, that now has 650 million active users. And then, of course, we're bringing Gemini into other Google properties that also have billions of users, like Maps, like YouTube, and other places when that makes sense. So I know this is a tourism session. That's kind of like the broader picture, and I wanted to bring you guys through a couple of queries and things that we're working on that kind of contextualize this within travel searches specifically. So starting with flights, I think similar to the keywords conversation, flight search is something we've sort of trained ourselves over the year to look for origin, destination, dates. It's kind of the parameters that we're searching for, right? But that's often not how vacation starts or the initial idea, right? So the initial idea might be, hey, I want to hang out with my college buddies. We're spread out in these 4 cities now. Can you find me a weekend in April with some good flights from these 4 places and suggest a place that's easy for us all to get to? In this particular search, right, maybe I want to go to a Christmas market in Europe, but I haven't actually decided exactly which city, and I'm a little bit indifferent to that. It's more about what's the good availability, what are the good pricing options. And one of the tools that we've recently launched is this flight deals search tool, also live in 200 countries now, right? And you can put that kind of more contextual query into it, and it'll give you results. So here, for the Christmas market search, right, it's finding you a few different cities, and then it's also giving you a historical comparison to the average flight to kind of suggest a good weekend and a good price for you. Kind of moving to a hotel query, right? So similarly, not just looking for a hotel in a city as a starting point, but saying, hey, I want to go to Taos, and for my family, like we really want to a heated pool and we want to be near a hiking trail. And Google's able to search, not just from our knowledge graph, but also incorporate stuff on maps and look at our reviews and figure out where are those heated pools, what is close to a hike, and give you that result. One of the things that I think is really important to a AI search experience that we'll continue to improve on is giving also context in the result of how we connected it to your search. So here, I think it's really important to say, here's the specific hiking trail that we found, and this is the name of it, and this is how close it is to the property, right? And so just making sure for users, Dave was talking about trust. I think that is one of the ways you build trust in these tools, is you help kind of contextualize, this is why I found this result. I found in the reviews that this place does have a heated pool, but someone also mentioned that they closed it for the month of December, so maybe you should double check, right? That's the kind of insights we can pull up right up into the front of these search experiences, so that your user experience isn't as much kind of digging through these reviews yourself. So, agentic stuff, right? I think agentic was a buzzword in 2025. One of my boss's favorite jokes is if you want to sound smart in a meeting, you should just say the word agentic. But I think also, for better or worse, probably a buzzword in 2026 too. What I think of this as really meaning is, that this doesn't stop here in terms of where we're going. Where we're ultimately going to go is to that end-to-end task completion. And again, that's because of the user expectation. So the user expectation isn't just that you can answer that more complicated query, it's also that you're able to take action on it and you're going to help be a more assistive, part of the process. Some examples, so there's not too much live here in travel today, but we're already working on this in some other industries on our team. So, one example is a restaurant reservation. This is a tool that's live, I think, in all of the US on AI mode today. And again, the query here can be a little bit broader. So it can say, I want to get some Cuban food, there's 5 people, here's the date, I also want some live music. And then the next version of the search, right, the expectation is not just here are some restaurants, but here are restaurants with tables and availability, and we can help you book it. And we do this through our partnerships with other companies like OpenTable and Resy. So it's important to know that Google is never the merchant of record in these conversations, in these transactions. We're always doing this through partnership. So also coming to travel, we announced in late November in collaboration with a number of travel partners that we're going to start also enabling agentic experiences here. Right now it is more focused, the program, on hotels and flights, I would say, but definitely coming to attraction tickets and tour operators soon. Again, really quickly evolving space. So even, I think just this week, our CEO announced at the National Retail Federation conference a few days ago that there's a universal commerce protocol that we've launched in this space in collaboration with a lot of companies to help enable these end-to-end transactions. I know all this can feel a little daunting. I think one suggestion I would have in terms of prepping for agentic stuff, one is continue to really invest in your direct website experience. So if you want to make sure that your own website as a business owner is showing as an option these agentic interfaces for the official site and whatnot, right? That's the best way is, I think, continue to develop a first-class experience on your own website. It's also a good time to start asking your reservation systems, and Nazi in the front here, whoever you use and your connectivity partners, like what is their plan for agentic? How are they working with Google and other marketplaces to enable these end-to-end transactions and start to plan for it? I'm going to shift the rest of the presentation today to talk on a slightly different topic. So I think the user experiences are really fun to talk about, but it is also important to remember that these LLMs are really only as good as the data that they sit on top of. Of course, Google's in a great position here with our knowledge of the web and the knowledge graph and maps and reviews and all that stuff. But another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with you guys today is the Google Business Profile as another really important piece of data that we use in these AI surfaces as kind of an input into the output. And so I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. If you're not, right, I really think of it as like your front door to Google as a business owner, kind of like our version of the Yellow Pages. Just in the US, for example, kind of fostering 2 billion connections per a year to businesses through this ecosystem. And it's also something you have a lot of agency over as a business owner to control and test certain features. This is another space that we're really investing for to future-proof it for AI results. And I wanted to talk about a couple of bets that we've made as new product features on Google Business Profile that you may or may not have heard of. So one is post. So as a business owner, you can now actually write sort of posts for temporary content. So think business updates. Maybe you're going to have an event for a World Cup viewing. You could add some information about that. Special offers or coupons, exhibits, things like that, right? And so this is a feature that you can kind of add that temporary content directly onto your Google Business Profile. A good thing to start taking advantage of that you haven't in the past. Those posts can also appear in other parts of Google, which is a really important thing to mention. Another brand new feature that I actually was digging around some of the attractions that are coming today, and I actually couldn't find anyone using this yet. Please tell me if you tried it. But we actually now have the ability for you to add your handles from Instagram, TikTok, and other places directly to your Google Business Profile. On one hand, that's cool to kind of send traffic out to the social platforms, but what's really cool about it is once you do that, we're going to start pulling in the content from those social platforms directly into your Google Business Profile. So just as kind of a way of consistency. Again, another opportunity here as these AI services evolve is that we'll also give that the opportunity to show in other parts of Google searches as part of our knowledge of things that might be happening at your business. So a pretty cool feature. I think for reference, you can add up to 10 different handles for different accounts. I was also thinking today, for a theater, it'd be great to add for your shows. If your shows have specific handles, another great way to pull in that specific content. So kind of wrapping up today, try to fit in a short amount of time. 4 things I wanted you to just kind of keep in mind for optimizing your content for your AI search experience in summary. Right, the first one, sort of obvious, but just be active. Be active on and kind of own your GBP profile is a really critical place. Maybe the most obvious thing I'll say today is Google Business Profiles with photos and videos are 90% more likely to have clicks to their business. So if you have a really bare profile page, it's not going to do very well. You really want to add not just text, but photos and videos and lots of content. Lots of tools there beyond the ones that I even talked about today. There's also a tool called Ticket and Tour Editor, if you haven't heard of it, where you can also add your ticket pricing information, and that'll help facilitate clicks to your official site for bookings as well. Of course, ensure you can access your content. So it's not just on Google Business Profile, but also on your website, kind of having structured data, making sure you're working, to help indexing engines pick up on everything. Number 3, I think, is really important. So it's just showcasing, unique value, local content. And so again, coming back to the beginning of the conversation, if you think about these queries getting more complicated, say I was asking Gemini, hey, my family's visiting, I have relatives visiting this weekend, and I want to go to a museum in Newark, New York. I've lived here a long time though, and I want to also find something that's kind of cool and different for me. Can you tell me which museums are having a special exhibit right now so I can also do something new? Google's not going to know that you're having a special exhibit if you haven't added this content to your business profile or in other places, right? So it's just really a reminder to kind of add that, what's unique, what's happening right now in your venue that's special. And then I'd say, just embracing transparency across platforms is really important. Remembering that AI is really synthesizing information across many different sources. So it's definitely not helpful if there's contradictory information in different places. So it's always good to make sure that you have kind of consistency across your different platforms. Not sure how I was doing on time, but hopefully about right. And yeah, thanks for your time today.